Are you ready to start wild camping but have no idea how to use one of these to find a great camping spot? Then this video is for you. Now, it's a complete mystery to me why anyone would take up a pastime like wild camping and not think at some point they need to have at least a brief glance at a map of some sort. To combat this, a lot of people will go online and ask for recommendations for wild camping locations here, there and everywhere. But here's the problem. A lot of wild campers are reluctant to share great spots that they found for fear of them being overused. I mean, it makes sense, you can relate to that. You found a great camping spot that you love. It's quiet, it's fantastic. Why are you going to go online and share that with however many thousands of people on an online group so that anyone that reads your post can go off there and use that camping spot? In this video, I'm going to show you how to use a few simple tips to take a map and find a great wild camping spot. Take a look at a map, see if we can identify some opportunities for wild camping, and then we'll get out there and take a look at the spot we've selected in person to see how it compares to the map. So let's get started. This is an Ordnance Survey or OS Explorer map, and it's some of the most detailed mapping of the UK available to mere mortals like you and me. OS Explorer maps are produced at a scale of 1 to 25,000. Which means that every 4 centimetre square on the map is roughly a kilometre on the ground. There are literally hundreds of OS Explorer maps available. This one is a waterproof active version of the map, and it's kind of laminated to keep it from getting wet. But there are also custom versions of the maps available where you define what area you want to see and OS print and send it out to you. But if large printed paper maps like this aren't your thing, then OS maps are also available as an app. Each mapped area costs significantly less than buying a paper map, and you can even subscribe to full UK mapping for around about £25 a year. This gives you access to the entire UK and all of Ordnance Survey's Explorer map detail. To get started using an OS map to plan your wild camping trip, I'm going to take you through a few questions that I ask myself each time I'm looking to put a trip together. Question 1 is, where do I want to go? Now, it sounds obvious, but you can't just climb in a car or jump on a bus or a train and expect to turn up magically in a fantastic wild camping location. You need to at least have an idea of the area you want to visit. Ask yourself if you want to camp in a forest, up a mountain, on a cliff top overlooking the sea. What is it about wild camping locations that appeal to you? Once you've answered this question, you're in a much better place to decide where and how you're going to wild camp. Now for me, most of the time I like to be up a hill with rugged mountains and hillsides all around me, fantastic views, and usually from my location in the West Midlands, this means I'm heading to either Snowdonia or the Lake District. I also like to be close to a south-facing slope because this is the direction in which the core of the Milky Way can be seen during the summer months. Question 2 is, which map or maps will I need? Okay, so let's say I've chosen Snowdonia for my next adventure. If you've chosen to subscribe to the OS Maps app, then all you have to do is put in the search engine Snowdonia, or specifically one of Snowdonia's mountains, like Cadair Idris or Snowdon. This will show you that area in all of OS Explorer Maps' fantastic detail, and you'll be able to carry on with the tips I'm going to give you a bit later on. If, on the other hand, you think a paper map is for you, then you need to know how to select the one you want. Have a look on the OS Maps website, and on there you'll find the area codes for each of the maps that Ordnance Survey produce. Snowdonia National Park is covered by 3 maps. Area codes for these maps of Snowdonia are OL17, OL18 and OL23. Now the waterproof, active versions of these maps will set you back about £14 each. And this makes the £25 annual subscription to the Ordnance Survey full UK maps a much more attractive proposition. However, there's something really satisfying about holding a full map in front of you and hunting your way across it to find a great camping spot. Now, I'm a bit of a map geek like that. My wife will often walk into the living room and find me staring at an Ordnance Survey map, just trying to figure out where I'm going to go on my next trip. But what that means is that when I get out there, I've got a mental image in my head of the map, the terrain, and I've got a pretty good idea of what to expect when I get where I'm going. Question 3 is, what sort of camping spot are you looking for? Now, I usually like to look for a camping spot near water. I couldn't tell you why I do that, I just feel very at home next to water. It also means that I've got a ready water source to filter into my stove or to refill my water bottles should I need it. Now, your requirements might be very, very different to mine. Maybe you want to camp in the middle of a forest near flowing water, or maybe you want to be as far as possible from roads and all other sources of noise. With a little bit of practice, you can use an OS map to identify all of these locations. Question 4 is, what can I see on my map? Now, this is a long section, folks, so if you're not sitting comfortably, I suggest you pause the video here, go get yourself a cup of tea, and then put your feet up, because we're going to dive into one of the 3 maps covering Snowdonia. I want to see if we can identify at least one likely looking wild camping spot using just a few simple little bits of knowledge. Okay, so this is the map I used for my Cadair Idris wild camp, which you might have seen on my first video. Unfortunately, it wasn't the map reading that let me down, but my lack of real research on the likely weather. Anyway, I'm going to deliberately not use the path I went up on that trip, but choose a different spot on Cadair Idris which fulfills my requirements a little better. Paper OS maps are huge and a little bit awkward until you identify the area you want and get it folded down to a reasonable size. But here, you can see Cadair Idris itself. The summit is marked by this little blue triangle, and the number next to it is the elevation in meters. Around the summit you can see a few bodies of water, including Llyn Gadair, which I failed to camp next to last time out. But we're not interested in Llyn Gadair this time, primarily because it does not fulfill my requirement of a south-facing slope. How do I know this? Well, this map is oriented so that north is directly upwards when looking at it with the writing the right way up. So I can see that all around the south side of Llyn Gadair are high, steep cliffs. How do I know these are high, steep cliffs? Well, if you look carefully, you will see lots and lots of red lines weaving their way about all over this area of the map. These are called contour lines, and put simply, these lines represent slopes. If the lines are close together, like here, then the slope is steep. If they're more widely spaced, then the slope is more gentle. So look at the lines around the south side of Llyn Gadair. They're very close together, meaning the slope all around this south side is very steep. How do we know it's high? Well, you can also see that several of these lines have got numbers printed in red, and this is the elevation in meters of this line, and it is constant throughout the entire length of that contour line. So you can see that at the south edge of Llyn Gadair the elevation is 570 metres, and at the top of the surrounding cliffs it is anything from about 780 metres to the top of Cadair Idris, which is 893 metres. Safe to say that views to the south are somewhat restricted. But what about the south side of the mountain? If we move south from the summit of Cadair Idris, then we come to this larger body of water called Llyn Cow. Llyn Cow ticks 2 boxes straight away in that it's a lake on a mountainside. But what about item 3 on my list? Is there a south-facing slope? The eagle-eyed amongst you will now be shouting, no, there's not at the screen, and you would be absolutely correct. There is no view to the south from any side of Llyn Cow. But there is this path just here. which after a very short distance, just 200 metres or so, arrives at the top of this cliff and appears to be above a south-facing slope. How can I tell that this slope is going down to the south and not continuing upwards? Well, if I follow the contour lines around to this point here, I can see that the elevation of each line is progressively lower as I move in a southerly direction. So Lyn Cawr offers a potentially better camping spot than other options around Cadair Idris, and there are clear paths into the area from a clearly marked car park. But what about identifying actual camping opportunities? Well, bear with me, because for this we have to look in a little more detail at the area around the lake. Are you still with me? Nice one. Okay, question 5 is, so can I wild camp here? Now in this section I'm not talking about the legalities of it, that's coming in a later video on another day. I'm talking about, can I physically pitch my tent in that location safely and comfortably? Now a prime wild camping location, particularly for a tent, requires one thing: flat ground. You can't just pitch your tent on some crazy sloping mountainside and expect to be able to sleep in it comfortably. You've got to be able to identify areas of potentially flat ground. And to do that, we have to consult our new friends, the contour lines. Now, around Lyn Cawr, to the north, west and south, the contour lines are very close together right from the water's edge. So we can visualise that there are probably steep cliffs rising straight out of the water on all 3 sides. On the east, however, we can see some areas where there is some clear distance between the lines. If you remember, the scale of this map says that every centimetre on the map is around 250 metres on the ground. So we can see here a couple of places where there might be 100 to 150 metres of land where the elevation doesn't rise or fall more than about 10 metres, which is the difference in elevation between adjacent contour lines. Now I'd be fairly confident that within this area I could find at least a couple of square metres of flat land to pitch my little wild camping tent. Now if you've made it this far and nothing has jumped out at you and screamed, no, this site is not suitable for wild camping, then congratulations, you have found a potential wild camping spot. So what's next? Well, you need to think through your trip. I'm going to go through this process in a later video, but in brief, you need to take a look at things like the path up to your chosen site. Is it steep? You can tell this by looking at how many contour lines your path crosses on the way from your car or your starting point up to your camping pitch. If it is steep, you need to take into account that the distance you're going to walk is going to be further than the flat distance suggested by the map. And obviously this will take you longer, so think about starting earlier or allowing more time to get to your camping spot. Finally, get out there, go and take a look. Some people choose to do a recce to their site before they take their camping gear along. Some people prefer to be a little bit more spontaneous and take their gear with them straight away. If you're of that persuasion, I suggest you take the time to try and figure out at least one backup location, just in case the location you've chosen as a primary spot turns out to be a bust. In part 2 of this video, I'm going to be heading up Cadair Idris to take a look at the spot we've selected. We'll compare the map to the actual land and the opportunities presented to us on the shores of Lyn Cawr, and if it looks as good in person as it does on the map, we'll pitch up the tent and spend the night. If you'd like to keep up with me and my adventures, please consider hitting that subscribe button and watching out for any future videos. And if you like what you've seen today, I'd be really grateful for you hitting that like button too. Finally, huge thanks for watching this video. It's been a long one, but well done if you stayed with me. Feel free to leave a comment in the section below, and I'll see you next time. Richie Parks for Wild Astro. See you next time. But if paper maps like this really aren't your thing,